Dear Polish and Canadian friends, the Battle of Monte Cassino was the costly series of 4 assaults by the Allies against the Winter Line in Italy, held by the Axis forces during the Italian campaign of World War II. The intention was to break through to the Rhone. The Battle of Monte Cassino has been described as the hardest fought battle of the World War II. Between 17 January and May 18, Monte Cassino and the Gustav defense was assaulted by 4 times by the Allied troops. On May 16, soldiers from the Polish 2nd Corps launched one of the final assaults on the German defenses position as a part of 21 division assaults along 20-mile front. On May 18, a Polish flag finally raised over the ruins of the Monte Cassino. On May 23, 1944, troops of the Polish 2nd Corps and Canadian 1st Infantry Division attacked Piedmont in Italy. On May 24, 1944, the German Sengher line south of Rome, Italy, was breached by the troops of Canadian 1st Infantry Division, Canadian 5th Armored Division and the Polish 2nd Corps. Following this Allied victory, the German Sengher line collapsed on May 25. The German defender was finally driven from the position by the Polish and Canadian troops. On May 25th, Polish troops captured Piedmont in Italy. The capture of Monte Cassino came at the higher price for the Polish-Canadian troops and Allied forces. The Allies suffered around 55,000 casualties in the Monte Cassino campaign, including 980 Polish soldiers and 850 Canadian that have been killed. Without the Battle of Monte Cassino, the Allies wouldn't have been able to completely break through the Gustav line, the southernmost line of the German defenses. The Allies also wouldn't have been able to capture Rome, which was occupied by the Germans until June 4, 1944. No doubt that without heroic act of the Polish and Canadian troops, the Allies' victory of Monte Cassino and the entire Italian campaign wouldn't have failed. Polish soldiers during the fight with the Germans in 1944 were not aware of the promise made to Stalin by the Western Allies in Tehran, allowing him to incorporate their homeland to the Soviet Union. Most Polish soldiers and officers of the battle never returned not only to their homes, but not even to the Poland in her new borders. Many of our soldiers and officers left Europe and immigrated to Canada to open a new chapter of their new land. Many of them joined Canadian military units and proudly served as the Canadian Army, in Air Force and Navy for many years, like Captain Janusz Żurakowski, Lieutenant Pilot Potocki, Admiral Tymiński, Major Pierścianowski or General Sznuk. Pilot Janusz Żurakowski was the Polish-Canadian pilot, first man in Canada to break the sound barrier, later becoming the chief experimental test pilot of the legendary Canadian first supersonic aircraft Avro. He was the pilot officer during the Battle of Britain in 1940, and afterward later a command of one of the Polish fighter squadron in England. General Sznuk was the last Polish Army and Air Force attaché in Canada before the Soviet control of the nation. After the mobilization of the Polish Army, he settled down in Canada. He helped over 450 Polish veterans immigrants to Canada after World War II and was active in the Polish community as a vice president of the Polish-Canadian Congress. He was the true leader of the Polish community in Canada for many years. In 1970, he was made an officer of the Order of Canada. General Sznuk died in 1986 in Ottawa, and he was buried in Notre Dame Cemetery Cemetery. Dear Polish and Canadian friends, in our dramatic history of Poland in 19th and 20th century, that Poles cultivated memory of such struggles like Monte Cassino and other important places that united us with our collective memories. One of them is the Battle of Monte Cassino. Its specific significance for Poles and Canadians is related not only to the military consequences of victory and the extraordinary sacrifice of our soldiers, Monte Cassino symbolizes far more than military merits. It symbolizes unity and nation identity for many people in Poland, Europe and in North America, including Canada. I believe that Monte Cassino, the Battle of Monte Cassino, was an important piece of entire strategy to the Allies' victory at the end of the World War II, but it also reflects our historical consciousness and national identity as a people and as a nation. Monte Cassino is still a very important element between Poland and Canada in historical and political dimension, and is deeply rooted in mind of the Polish-Canadian community across Canada. The Battle of Monte Cassino it also symbolized for Poland's keeping its obligation as an ally. Unfortunately, we never saw the fulfillment of this obligation by our Western allies, neither in 1949 nor in 1945. Thank you.
Dear veterans, Polish and Canadian friends, 77th anniversary of the Battle of Monte Cassino is a special occasion to highlight Polish-Canadian partnership in defense and our nation brotherhood in arms. We can find plenty of examples of battlefield friendship and direct cooperation in many military campaigns during the Second World War, including the Dieppe Ride, the Battle of Atlantic, the Battle of Britain, Italian campaign, the Battle of Normandy, and liberation of Netherlands. Those extremely close cooperation and friendship remain until today. Polish and Canadian soldiers, hand in hand, protect peace and stability across the world. We value Canadians' active political and military engagement in support of European security as framework nation in NATO enhanced forward present Latvia, and earlier through the deployment of Canadian troops in Drawsko-Pomorskie as a part of the Operation Reassurance. The current cooperation between our nation in Latvia and a significant NATO eastern flank is also extremely and has yielded significant result in terms of collective implementation of our forces. Moreover, Polish and Canadian soldiers work to strengthen NATO's southern flank in Romania, while simultaneously conduct joint NATO training and advisory mission in Iraq and Ukraine. Cooperation between the Polish and Canadian armed forces is remarkable and continues to develop through joint training activities involving our respective land forces, navies and air forces or territorial defense. Polish troops train alongside Canadian soldiers in Arctic, while Canadian soldiers regularly participated in NATO exercises organized on Polish territory. Polish and Canadian warships are together in NATO naval groups conducting combined operations and exercises in the Atlantic and the Baltic Sea. Furthermore, Poles do not forget that Canada was the first country accepted Poland as a full member of NATO alliance. Dear friends, the modern world and current dynamic situation in Eastern Europe and in the Middle East provide once again that freedom and independence is not given once and for all. It must be maintained every day. Therefore, continuation and enhancement of our close cooperation on matters of security is very important. I strongly believe that by building on successful efforts of past year, we will strengthen our relation not only in collective defense, but in other areas of our bilateral cooperation. Poland and Canada have always stood and shall remain standing shoulder to shoulder with our allies and friends in defense of universal values of human rights. Ladies and gentlemen, we will never forget Polish soldiers' heroism shown during the Battle of Monte Cassino and other Second World War military campaigns. And we will remember Polish and Canadian great sacrifice brought for peace and our freedom. Thank you very much.